This is The Starry Night by Neil Waldman. And taking what we've already learned about Vincent van Gogh and his work, you should know by now that Vincent van Gogh was born in the Netherlands or Holland, spent a great deal of his life in France, the heart of the art world at the time of his life. And so this is definitely a story because this takes place in New York City, a place where Vincent never truly traveled. But it still shows us all the art elements that Vincent used and how his work is influential, which means it influences our art and our thoughts about our own subject matter and art through the eyes of a boy named Bernard. So we'll get started with this book, and I will try to get the pictures lined up with the screen as best I can. These are going to be pretty hard to line up from the start. It's a 2-page spread of different kids' attempts at the Starry Night. And as my second and third graders know, we are creating a snowy, snowy night from the inspiration of The Starry Night. Across the shaded hills and winding pathways of Central Park, daffodil stars exploded in yellow splendor. So here is the accompanying picture. You can tell by the way the paint looks thick and there's lots of broken lines and dashes. This is to look like a Van Gogh. A group of boys raced alongside the still, reflecting pool where children played with sailboats under the watchful eyes of their mothers. So I'm going to back this up now so you can see the brown and white, we also call that sepia, drawings in the book. The boys darted around a sharp curve and ran past a frail-looking man who stood before an old wooden easel. The last of the boys came to a stop as the others charged off onto a grassy field. "Come on, Bernard," one of them called, but Bernard didn't move. Here is Bernard, stopped in his tracks. And here is what likely stopped him. He just stood there, staring at the brightly colored canvas. The man glanced at Bernard and returned to his painting. Bernard sat down in the grass. After a while, the man turned and nodded. "It's finished," he said in funny-sounding English. "The Big Apple never looked better," Bernard beamed. Here is Bernard watching the man add finishing touches. And here is what the man finished. Whether you've been to New York or not, you probably know that the nickname for New York City is the Big Apple. The man began packing up his paints and easel. "Where are you going?" Bernard asked. "To find another place that asks to be painted." "What's your name?" "Vincent," the man smiled. "Do you paint all the time?" "Yes," said Vincent. "That's why I'm here." "Where do you come from?" Bernard asked. "Far away. I just arrived today." "Well, I've lived here all my life," Bernard said. "I could show you some amazing places." "I'd like that very much," said Vincent. Bernard took Vincent north to Harlem, south to the Statue of Liberty, and east to the Brooklyn Bridge. South, north, and east. They spent their days in Greenwich Village, in Chinatown, in Times Square and on Fifth Avenue. You might recognize Times Square from the New Year's Eve ball drop, if you get to stay up and watch that. Wherever they went, Bernard watched as Vincent painted New York in bright and beautiful colors. Then one day Vincent said, "It's time for me to go, but before I leave, there is one place I want to show you." Vincent took Bernard to a big building on 53rd Street. Inside, the walls were covered with beautiful paintings. They went up an escalator to the second floor. Vincent led Bernard to a blue and yellow painting of a country village at night. Here they are walking to what is called the MoMA, or the Museum of Modern Art. Bernard stood silently for a long time. He could hardly breathe. He even felt a shiver pass through him. "Vincent, this looks exactly like one of yours. You painted this picture, didn't you?" But there was no answer. "Vincent?" Bernard spun around, but Vincent wasn't there. "Vincent!" he called. "Where are you?" Bernard raced through every room of the museum, but his friend was nowhere to be found. He walked sadly back to the blue and yellow painting. Bernard looked at the swirling stars, the orange moon, the sleeping village. He thought about the many days when he had watched in wonder as Vincent painted the streets of Harlem, Midtown, the village, and the great lady with the torch across from the bay in Battery Park. "The Big Apple never looked so great," Bernard whispered. His eyes widened. He turned and left the museum. Bernard came back a few minutes later, carrying a brown paper bag. He sat down across from Vincent's painting. Then he opened the bag, took out a sketch pad and a box of colored pencils. And Bernard began to draw. When we borrow an artist's style, I don't ever want you to feel like it's cheating or copying, because attempting another artist's style is how you learn more about your own style. The only time that becomes cheating or stealing is when you try to use someone's style and artwork, call it your own, and try to sell it. We are not trying to sell ours. We are trying to learn more about our style as we discover more about the elements of art every time we work. So when you are attempting your Starry, Starry Night, which is actually a snowy, snowy night, you are not directly copying Vincent, and we are not selling these in a museum for millions of dollars, even if you wish we could. So I hope you enjoyed the Starry Night. Please feel free to watch this over and over again if you'd like to try to sort of scavenger hunt and discover some of the paintings in the background of the pictures of Bernard and Vincent in the Metropolitan Museum of Modern Art. There are definitely some you've seen before in the other book that I read.